Today, I'm going to be making money at the Sardegna 800 using the 787B engine. The 787B engine. We've put it in an RX7, and that means there's a little bit of this. A lot of this. And unfortunately, a couple of these. But that's on me, not the car. So this is the tune I've ended up with. I've used racing medium tyres to increase the grip of this car, giving us more traction, as I believe for this race, it's quite important. I would have also liked to have added more camber, but unfortunately, by doing that, it ate the tyres too quickly. So we're stuck with what we got. You may also wonder why we haven't attached a giant turbo to this car, as we've got the free performance points for it, and that's because I believe it's actually a hindrance to this car. And here are the reasons why. Number one, all that power is at the high end, and that means when we're trying to come out of low speed corners, we don't have the downforce to retain traction, which means we're going to slide, and that is going to cost us time. On top of that, it is going to eat the tyres far too quickly, and we're already barely going to make 5 laps. Of course we could switch to racing hard tyres, but that's going to make traction harder, and it's going to slow us down for the other corners as well, removing all benefit of the extra power. The third reason is it's going to use more fuel, and eating more fuel means more time in the pits. So from the testing I've done, less power, surprisingly, equals faster. As what good is extra power if you can't control it? Or at least I couldn't. And now with the tune understood, let's move on to how to handle this car around the track. As the race begins, it becomes clear pretty quickly that we've got quite enough power as it is. Clearly, we're the fastest car on the grid as we fly past our opponents. And as we come out of the second corner, as soon as we feel stable, we're dropping down to first gear so that we can really power out of it. The first of 4 times per lap, where we'll actually use first gear, with the second being not long after. As the second corner of the S-bend, we drop down to first, allowing us to power out and take a few more positions. Although, this strategy is going to slightly change as the tyres become more worn through the race, and we have to adjust. As we fly up the hill, at speeds exceeding anything our opponents could dream of reaching, it means we've got to hit the brakes early. So as soon as that 200 sign goes above us, we start beginning to get rid of all that speed before the sharp left-hander, where we drop down to first, and while this time we power it out all the way to the red line, in future laps, as our tyres get worse, we'll start switching to second gear a little earlier, as this section can become a bit treacherous. By now, we've reached the final of our first gear corners, where in later laps, where the tyres are more worn, you may want to cruise around in second gear, before dropping to first to power out. But for now, we're striking while the iron's hot, because we want to get to the front, so we don't have to deal with all these AI cars. Because it's a well-known fact, they kinda act like dicks, and I don't want to get spun out. And yet right after saying that, I end up being the one to cut an AI car off, almost causing an accident. Yep, that one's on me. At this point, we've only got 6 cars left in front of us, and it looks like they're all spread out throughout the lap. And sure, if they're all bunched up, we could get past them a lot quicker, but I'm okay with spread out. As whenever we catch a car, we are going at a much faster speed to them, and if you end up colliding with one of them, which you're more likely to do in a bunch, it causes serious damage to the car, and that's going to end up costing you overall time. So honestly, I'm okay with them being spread out. Trust me, it's still going to win. And coming up towards the end of the third lap, anyone who's not aware, I'm about to teach a lesson. Grass? Bad. As I'm very lucky to regain my control just before ending up on a wall, regaining my composure, and getting back on track to chase down the skyline in front of me. It's about the 4th lap, where the tyres become so worn that it's time to switch strategy a little bit. So instead of entering these first gear corners in first gear, we're going to be entering from now on in second, only switching to first once we've come out and the car feels stable enough for it. That will make driving safer and still give us a power boost so that we don't fall too far behind on the corners. Although, it doesn't mean that there's not a chance you're going to lose traction. But I do believe that this car is very stable, so even if it does go a little bit at the back, you should be able to recover it. Or you could be using traction control, in which case, it could be a non-issue. I haven't actually tested that. So if you do run traction control, please let me know. At this point in the race, we're in 5th place. And as we come up to the end of the 4th lap, 2 of the opponents we still have to catch decide they need to move into the pits. This means that they're going to be taking an extra pit stop per race. It also means we're in a podium spot. And although our tyres are very worn, it's still going to be enough to get us to the end of a 5th lap. Well, almost. Our back tyres will be completely shot, but the amount of rear downforce on them is going to allow us to stably get to the pit lane, so that we can put on a fresh set and a small amount of fuel. Just enough to make the next 5 laps, to minimise weight and tyre wear. Since we don't need much fuel, we come out of the pits in first, only to be instantly overtaken by 2 other cars. As we try and get those positions back, the first of those cars that we come across is the WRX. Now I believe this driver is playing it economically, trying to minimise his pit stops, because, well, he's slow, and he doesn't put up much of a fight as we fly past him. However, in stark contrast to this, is the first place holder, the Dodge Viper, and he's the quickest car we've come across in this race. But I do believe that he's one of the cars that has to pit every 3 or 4 laps. So as quick as he is, he's already out of the competition. And the fact that we've already overtaken him before he makes that pit stop means I'm not actually sure what sort of competition we have remaining for us. The Viper does its best to keep up with me through the lap, pushing himself harder and harder. But at each section of straight, no matter how small, we slowly start edging that distance further and further apart. And his aggressive driving and trying to keep up means he's using more fuel. So by the time the next lap rolls around, he's got a pit. And we continue on, speeding our way around the track until we come to the end of the 10th lap, where it is our turn to make our second and final pit stop of the race, making sure we've got enough fuel for 5 more laps and fresh tyres. With that, we're back out on the track, with a giant lead over any opponents in the race and 5 more laps to go, meaning the only interesting events we have are when we come across back markers, and other than that, well, there's nothing. But eventually, 15 laps does roll around, so with no rear tyres, we make our way down towards the finish line, sliding across to victory. And just to show how unimportant the tyres actually are, we still lapped in a 1 minute 40. With that, thank you guys all so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it, and that this tune has some sort of benefit for you. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week. Bye!